Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, can at times contain adult language and themes. It is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Digital Dissection podcast, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. We are your humble hosts, Joe and Mark, two pop culture nerds dedicated to telling entertainment history before it's forgotten too soon. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog for more information on the show. We also love to hear from you, so why not write us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to dissecting.
Welcome back, pop culture nerds, to Digital Dissection, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. You might notice we're fans of Ghostbusters here, and today we're revisiting the 1997 show, Extreme Ghostbusters. You might also notice we're joined by a new guest that some of our Twitterverse friends know quite well. He's a radio show host, podcast guest, and self-proclaimed professional pain in the ass. We welcome Zack to the show. How we doing, Zack?
I am doing good. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yes, a long time coming, man.
Yeah, I didn't go back and check the first date when we were actually, DMing each other.
Yeah.
But it was a while ago. But you guys have been busy. You've had so many people on. You dissect so much stuff. So I'm happy to be a part of this, and I'm a little nervous because usually I have some knowledge of what we're talking about. I have very little knowledge of this. I have knowledge of Ghostbusters, but this was really my first step into the extreme side.
Ooh.
Or dark side, whichever way, wherever it was aired, it has different names apparently, which I like.
Yes, just like the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Yes,
They had to change
Turtles.
everywhere,
Yes.
depending on where they went.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. It is an interesting part of pop culture history because Extreme Ghostbusters, for those of you who could find it when it was on TV, it did kind of live in this unique space. And so a lot of us didn't even know it existed. I only knew about it because I just happened to be home at this specific time when school got out, and boom, I was watching it. So, but yes, as we mentioned, Extreme Ghostbusters came out in 1997, which for those of you who have noticed that I am old as fuck, that means it happened quite a long time ago here.
Yeah.
Now, what I'd like to do, just to kind of start us off today, is take us back to 1997 in a few different ways. Now, one of the things I always love to do is talk about products of the past, and 1997 has a few notable products that you might remember. Now, we're going to actually start with the internet. Do you guys remember what was available to us as a translation tool back in 1997 on the early internet?
Translation tool. Was it Alta Vista?
Alta Vista was a search engine, but you're close.
I mean, I don't remember. Let's just say I wasn't using the internet to translate things at the time.
Yeah, I didn't even know it had that power.
No, I know it
Yeah.
could do other things, just not that.
Yeah. Everybody was looking at low-res pornography at the time, but no.
What? No, just no.
Never.
No,
No one's ever
no.
dialed out to some weird
Honey,
country.
no, I never did love you. You're
Yeah.
great.
Heavens no. The owners don't even want us talking about it.
No.
So back then, Babelfish was the official translation.
Babelfish. Oh,
Babelfish.
you just unlocked something in my brain. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I had to open up MapQuest to get there, but it took us a bit, but we got there.
And print out the instructions.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, Babelfish was running the show back then on the internets. Now, something that also stays in the realm of technology, if you remember, the PlayStation controller used to just be the thing that you pushed buttons on, right?
Yeah.
Well, in 1997, the DualShock technology reared its head, allowing us to vibrate through levels, races, and jumping on things. So this was the first year of the DualShock controller, believe it or not.
And that was just, what, 3 short years after the Rumble Pack?
Yeah, actually,
yeah.
yeah, it was pretty close. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loved vibrating while they played video games. I don't know.
It sucked you right in. Like, oh, I got hit. Therefore, my hands should be vibrating.
A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people still enjoy vibrating playing games now. I've
Yeah.
noticed. It's a
I
thing.
honestly, I can't even play video games without vibrating. Like I'm so used to it now. It would feel awkward.
Oh,
Less
I'm sorry.
stimulating, I believe, is what you're going for.
All right. Well, 1997. Let's shift around a little bit. We're gonna head on over to food for a minute because food is very popular. You
There
know,
we
a
go.
lot of the, a lot of people believe that the key to a man's heart is through his stomach.
Hmm.
And this was a very important year for McDonald's. Believe it or not. Do you guys happen to know what happened at McDonald's in 1997?
Was this the year of the coffee lawsuit?
Ooh. Or I had another guess if that's wrong.
Okay, go ahead.
Did they debut the Arch Deluxe?
So
Ooh.
we're closer to Zach's answer,
Damn.
but this is a very important time for McDonald's. The McChicken, the McDouble, and the McFlurry all premiered in 1997.
Wow.
Mm.
Good year for McDonald's. Holy shit.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been rolling along ever since, right?
Yes,
Uh,
unlike the Hawaiian burger or was it the McDLT?
yeah, yes,
Mhm.
you got to keep your hot food hot and your cold side cold.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this has been rocking the menu ever since. Another food item is the Oreo O's, very popular breakfast
Yeah.
item at the time.
Mm-hmm. Why not
Which
just
actually,
admit the whole thing's cereal and make it Oreos? I mean, the whole thing's sugar. Obviously, it was cereal. Let's just, yep, that's blatantly sugar now, everyone. We're just putting Oreos in milk.
this is a 2 pound bag of sugar that you could serve to your children, right? Now, speaking of high quantities of sugar, this was also the year that Surge premiered.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Can you guys feel your fillings and cavities just like, shouting
Shaking.
and
Yep. You
That's
did
why
this to me!
that's why my dentist is getting so much of my money. All of the surge in my past drinking habits.
I was
yep,
really banking and hoping on 3D Doritos coming out this year, too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I 3D ish. It was really just Doritos that were fat in the middle
Yep.
and
yes.
but then still skinny on all the corners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this was actually probably like some sort of weird production mistake. It was like the legitimate like "Oops, all berries." This was a mistake, whereas "Oops, all berries" that was planned. The captain knew what he was doing.
That was
Yeah.
deliberate. That was absolutely deliberate.
Oh, that captain's into a lot of stuff. Yeah, we talked about him on Effin Cultured. We roasted his butt with a lot of serial people, and he's into some dark stuff. That captain, Horatio. That's right. We know your name, Captain.
I didn't even have a name. I thought it was just the captain.
Dude, seriously. It's up there with Chuck E. Cheese, who's Charles Entertainment Cheese. Like they
Yeah.
all have real names,
Mhm.
surprisingly. Okay, so one last trip over to technology for a minute.
Okay.
Now this was a godsend to all of us that were going through more advanced mathematics at the time. The TI-86 calculator also premiered
Mm-hmm.
in 1997.
I still have mine from high school.
Yeah, it
It's
got
still
me through some
working,
hard
still going.
times.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still have the old 83.
Yeah.
Wasn't around to get the 86.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
The 86 kind of got me through some tough times in life. It also got me through biology.
Mm-hmm.
Which could have been a tough time in your life.
Yep.
Yeah. It also got me through the show with the magician who kept revealing all those secrets. It was just tough to be a kid in this era.
Also, apparently tough to be like I would say an honest magician because
yeah,
that man keeps
yeah.
ruining all the secrets.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody knows if you watch Arrested Development, you don't tell people how to
No.
do the magic.
Yep. And then Will Riker's out there making up stories, and we can't tell which
Yes.
one's real and which one isn't.
That's right. We made it up. Total fiction. But actually, kind of rounding this out and going back to the landscape that we lived in with Extreme Ghostbusters, obviously, that wasn't the only cartoon that was out there at the time. And what I'm going to do is just kind of read through a really quick list for you guys just to see what memories jog loose, what kind of body language you're giving me. We're establishing a baseline here.
Okay.
So, other animated shows that were on television at the same time as Extreme Ghostbusters. We've got Daria, the spinoff from Beavis and Butthead.
Mm-hmm.
Donkey Kong Country actually had an animated spinoff series as well.
Shit.
Yeah.
Did not watch that one.
Yeah, it was out there. It was. Yeah, another extreme show called Extreme Dinosaurs was out there.
I do recall that one.
Yeah,
Vaguely.
yeah. We got Franklin,
Yep.
the educational turtle.
Mm-hmm.
We got Johnny Bravo.
Yeah, Johnny Bravo.
Mm.
Man, I'm pretty.
Do the
We
monkey
talked
with
about
me.
this. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before the show. We got the Men in Black series, which is
Mm-hmm.
also made by the same studio as Extreme Ghostbusters, and a couple smaller shows you may not have heard of. We've got Pokemon.
No. Yep.
Tiny. What?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's independent. I don't know.
Yeah, it fits in
It's in
your
my notes
pocket.
here.
It's so small.
Gotta grab a few or something. I forget the catchphrase.
I don't know.
It was
You have
never that big, right?
yeah, procure quite a few,
Flash in the
something like
pan.
that.
Procure quite a few.
Yep. And
Up.
then we have Recess and
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
South Park also premiered in
Oh.
1997.
Yeah, the early days of South Park, but it was more toilet humor than satire.
Yeah, it's very original,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is back when they weren't quite adapting everything from, what's on TV that day.
Yeah.
So a little bit different experience, but nonetheless still going strong
Yeah.
all this time later.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of place people in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
we're drinking sugary drinks with a ton of caffeine in them. We're eating our Oreo O's, and we're just getting down that path of diabetes with the McChicken, the McDouble, and the McFlurry. So
Yep, and that's what it was like to be a kid in the late 20th century.
yes, it was, but it felt like the future, and that's why we're here. So anyway, what we're here to talk about today are the Extreme Ghostbusters. So this TV series that obviously has had an impact on me, Joe, a little bit. We're showing off the logos for those of you
Yeah.
listening to the audio only program. And it was announced in 1996. This was a good year for the Green Bay Packers, which for those of you that don't care for sports, and we mention it occasionally here, they were playing some good football then.
Mm-hmm.
But Adelaide Productions was the one behind this series. And as we mentioned, the Men in Black series, they were also adapting that from film to TV too.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then
they were
shortly
kind of,
after, Godzilla as well from
yes.
the not as great movie. America's shot at making Godzilla for the first time, and the cartoon was loads better than the movie
Mm-hmm.
that came out.
Matthew Broderick did what he could, but yeah.
Yeah, when Godzilla doesn't blow fire, what can you do?
That's a movie that I love to hate watch
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm,
don't necessarily hate it, but I get a lot of nostalgia for it.
Yep.
yes.
And so it's an awful rendition of Godzilla, and Legendary has done far better now.
Yes.
But I will still watch that and go. It's like a dirty secret in your closet you don't want people to know. It's like, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch Godzilla, 90s version. Oh boy,
Yeah. I mean, and it's also hard to hate anything Jean Reno is in. Yep.
true,
To
true.
me, it
Mhm.
feels like you broke up with your ex, and your friends are telling you don't do it, don't go over there again. But you're like, no, 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 no.
It's
There's a
fine.
there's a little bit of catharsis I get from
Mhm.
this. Just let me have that for now. Sorry, Zach, if we're digging a little too deep there. Let me know if I
No.
struck oil already.
No, it's good. I like it. This is a fun ride. I'm enjoying. I'm holding on, but I'm enjoying.
Well, speaking of a fun ride, to quote Dan Aykroyd from Ghostbusters 2, the real Ghostbusters was off the air for 5 years at this point in time, right? So it officially ended in October of 1991. And Columbia has kind of been known as Columbia/Sony, right? Because Sony
Mhm.
technically owns the rights. They've been known for sitting on properties for quite a long time and literally doing nothing with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, even looking at like real Ghostbusters by the end of its run, they didn't really know what to do with it by the end when it became Slimer in the real Ghostbusters, and they just
Mhm.
tried making it so. I mean, it went from like what half like the original was like 30 minutes of Ghostbusters, and then it was 15 minutes of like a weird Slimer short, and then 15 minutes of a Ghostbusters story,
Yep.
and then I think by the end of it all, it was just Slimer. You didn't even like left out the Ghostbusters story. So clearly, if they were going to do something with this, they had to rethink what the hell they were going to do with it.
It's very true. And for those of you that listened to our episode in season one, Dial G for Ghostbusters, we actually talked about how the studio royally screwed up the real Ghostbusters. They brought in this private firm at the end of like season 3, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and they had them reassess everything they were doing. They wanted to actually kill off Ray Stantz, just
Poor
a
Mm.
Ray.
small part of the Ghostbusters. It was really strange, and so the whole thing went this different path. So yeah, it was interesting that this is kind of where we were with this. Like, okay, we kind of royally screwed up what was a very successful cartoon,
Mm-hmm.
and Ghostbusters has been sitting idle. Sorry, not idle, idle, idle since 1989. So here we are, 8 years later, 9 years later, trying to figure out what we can do next with this. So what did they think they could do? Well, let's take a series that was known to be very kid friendly, and we're going to start adding some darkness to it. Now, Zach, you actually mentioned this. What was one of the early titles for this show that you remember?
Ghostbusters Dark.
Yes, absolutely. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you, Joe, when you hear Ghostbusters Dark?
That for some reason the team is led by Batman and John Constantine. We don't know why they're there. It's probably because Batman, who prefers to work alone, is going to work with a bunch of kids and then be a part of every single league in the DC universe. And now he's going to work with the Ghostbusters.
I think Ghostbusters Dark, and I just immediately start thinking like hardcore drugs. Uh, uh,
Very different places that we just went
Boy.
there.
yeah,
But you know what? They're
Mhm.
both dark.
Yeah.
It's
So
Batman,
that
heroin.
it
Both
speaks to
both dark.
each of you in different ways, clearly.
very true, very well. Yeah, there's nothing that gets a rise out of me other than heroin. Just speaks to you differently.
Yep.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
do drugs, kids. Don't do
yes,
drugs.
yes,
Yeah, especially since the Ghostbusters were used in that 1990 crossover or whatever it was about not
Mhm.
doing drugs. So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah, which I guess would really be fitting if we delivered this message both dark and extreme, and we say don't do drugs. We'd have to be on skateboards as we say this, as a very again '90s approach to this whole scenario.
Just as you're riding by on a skateboard, tossing eggs in the air, hitting it with a frying pan.
That's right. The Rachel Lee Cook commercial where she's like frying eggs. I'm like, you're trying to tell me not to take drugs, but now I'm just
I'm just
hungry.
hungry.
I'm very hungry.
Hmm.
And
I
why are you
love eggs.
smashing your apartment? You just have to clean all that up.
That's right. Well, I think the moral of the story is drink your school, don't do milk, and stay in drugs. Is that what it is?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. But yes, so Columbia knows that Ghostbusters makes money, right? It has always historically made money, did really well in the box office, and the cartoon stayed on the air for several years after the movies came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to reboot the property or just kind of restart it, right? And that's where we end up with this Ghostbusters Extreme slash Dark. Um, but as the beginning of all shows tend to be, there are some things that don't quite make it from inception to the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing I want to start off with. We've been inundated with superheroes quite a bit, right?
A little bit.
For some reason, people in the beginning of Extreme Ghostbusters were thinking, should we make them like superheroes? Should they be, like super powered and larger than life? Guys, what do you typically think of when you think Ghostbusters? Do you think superheroes right away?
I think usually,
No,
usually scrambling for money is what I think of with Ghostbusters.
I think of how they started as not jokes, but everyone looked down on them. They weren't considered serious. They were laughed at until they had their first big break when they captured Slimer in the movie, and then all of a sudden, oh, all this paranormal stuff. Oh, look, the Ghostbusters, it's real. That's how I think of the Ghostbusters starting is the zero to hero metaphor.
Yeah. Some would say
Yeah.
that their theories were even the worst of their kind, and they were poor scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people say they're full of crap and that's why they went out of business. And so some of the producers thought this at first. Fortunately, we ended up instead getting people who were more like misfits, kind of in the spirit of what you mentioned, Zach. And we ended up getting a team with a hip new attitude.
Sure.
Yep. If the '90s liked one thing, it was teenagers with attitudes.
And
Oh,
they all have attitudes, and it's and I'm sure you'll get into it, but it's like the original team, just younger and edgier.
Yes.
Teenage
Mm-hmm.
angst among all these all these kids. Well, kids, maybe adults, because they're college. Yeah, they're
Yeah, they're
college.
college. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, young adults. Maybe they took some high
Mm,
school credits that, transferred to the college. You never quite know
We
how
don't
that
know.
works out. We don't
Mm-hmm.
ask.
the 7 year
Uh,
plan, they're fine.
Yep.
there you go. But yeah, you know what? This idea began swirling around. It's like, do we bring back the old crew that likely have arthritis or, maybe they're incontinent? We don't know. And instead, we reboot in a sense by bringing in this new young team of Ghostbusters, which is basically the idea that Dan Aykroyd had ever since, 1989, where
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about how we can, pump some new life into this. And actually, I'll actually decide. You guys, you can either tag team this if you want to explain it. What does this new team of Ghostbusters look like?
Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, yeah, sure. They are. I think I mean, I hate to make the superhero analogy, but it's almost Avengers like because you've got four four different characters who are very distinct from each other, and when they first come together, they don't really see eye to eye or even get along or even would like each other all that much, except for one of them really likes one of the other ones, kind of embarrassingly so. But it's kind of this great concept of like they have to actually like learn to work with each other, and that's something that develops like over the course of the series. Whereas before, when we had the original team, it was pretty much just if there was any tension, it was just Peter picking on Egon.
Which I mean, I laughed at a lot.
Oh, completely.
I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No, that was what I got. It was the long and short of it. I didn't know if he wanted to go into actually Joe describes the physical characteristics of the four new Ghostbusters, or if we could just go with a nice generalization. In which case, I assume that at least two of them have silky smooth skin, because those are the same two that I assume actually bathe regularly of the four.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Okay. You know what? I got to say this is like three different people witnessing like an event in front of them unfold, and everyone's probably going to have a different interpretation of the events. That's how eyewitnesses work.
Hmm.
Now, actually, something that we should have mentioned before this. Now, we invited Zach onto the show. He hadn't actually seen Extreme Ghostbusters.
Oh.
So I'm
Correct.
actually
Mm-hmm.
interested, Zach, in what your initial thoughts were on this quote unquote new team that we're being introduced to.
Um, so right away, the first thought is it's the same characters, just different, if that makes any sense. And I see here you guys were, I think, thinking similarly. Each one of them had their different characteristics of the original four of Egon, Winston, Peter, and Ray. Um, Kylie is very. It was Kylie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
Kylie. So she's the only one of them that has any sort of paranormal interest and knowledge, and she reads all the books. Which I mean, Ray and Egon both were like that in the original group, but uh, Egon is definitely more the tech guy in the cartoons, at least, and Kylie seems like the more all right. I'm into Tobin Spirit Guide kind of mentality.
hmm,
Um, that I picked up on. The other one, which was super easy, was Eduardo. He is
yeah,
Peter.
Mm-hmm.
He's just Peter with a
Yep.
tiny little chin goatee.
yeah, yeah,
That was as soon as he was his attitude. It's like, yeah, okay, that's Peter. That's a Peter character right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got that.
yeah,
Um, Roland, I was like, he could be to me either Egon or Ray. He physically more resembled Ray, I think, with like the face structure, but I guess
yeah.
turns a little bit more Egon. I only got a few episodes in.
Sure.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Garrett definitely was Winston. He was the wheelman. He was the everyman. He was able to, and just much like Winston in the cartoon, they evolved his character so that he did a lot more. And that I think was one of the big things. The problems with the movies is they didn't utilize Winston. He was just like, all right, here's your one job, maintain the car.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it, And he had a little bit more to do in the second movie, but in the cartoon, they were able to build his character up.
Very true, actually, which is like I think I consider one of like the cinema sins of the Ghostbusters universe. which I think they did a good job. The producers did, at least in this show, of giving each one of these characters their due. And as you mentioned, yeah, there's definitely some equivalencies that they have with the on-screen counterparts of the main characters, right? Um, but while that may be the similarity, I don't feel like they're like entirely rooted to those things,
No, no.
which is great. They each one of these characters along the way gets an actual like dedicated episode to their background, so that's the fun stuff of this series is you're not just getting things that feel familiar, you are getting brand new as well. And so for a children's show, I was like, I'm going to give you guys some credit here. This is actually
Mhm.
some, this is like higher IQ thinking for a kids show. And I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Yeah, I definitely would. There are definitely some episodes that really stand out for that. Like I think it's one called Fear Itself, where
Mm,
literally a ghost that's in the episode I think is actually like pretty tiny and rather unassuming, but it immediately can tap into the fears of the people that are around it and force them to hallucinate, and
yeah,
making each of the Ghostbusters of the new team have to literally face their fears when they are like so bad that they're crippling them. I thought was something that was, I mean, pretty good for a kids show the way they tackled it, because especially when I think Eduardo's afraid of dying.
yeah,
So
he is.
that's
Mm.
He
it's
is.
a pretty steep one. That's very difficult to bring up for or even talk about death with kids. So that was as far as some of them go, because I think they also like tackle anti-Semitism at some point in this show,
They
which is
do.
pretty
They
Really?
do.
steep for a kid show.
They do.
Wow.
There's a yeah. So there's um, a rabbi whose temple gets vandalized actually, and his nephew, in retaliation, summons a golem. Which, for those of you that know some of the Judaism lore, golems can be summoned to protect Jewish folks. And so yeah, it was pretty heavy-handed stuff for a kids show. And to get back to the characters for a second, you know, I think to be able to balance this type of thing into a TV show is really only possible when you have a cast that is up to the challenge of doing this. And so that's why I want to focus on this for a minute, is because the cast of this show, I mean, unbelievable amount of work these folks have done. And starting off with Kylie, she's played by Tara Strong, which
Yep.
anyone who's listened to or watched any animation in the last 25
Mm-hmm.
years, she's everywhere.
Yeah.
She's on everything.
If you've watched a cartoon, you've heard her, and you probably don't even know it.
Yeah. I mean, most of us would know her for Harley Quinn,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, she's been all over animation ever since. Maurice LaMarche, who voices Egon, who's one of the original cast that comes over from Real Ghostbusters, he's
Mm-hmm.
he's reprising his role as the mentor to this team. And Maurice LaMarche, good lord, I could talk with that dude all day.
Yeah.
He's one
Things.
of my favorite voice actors of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you were Warner Brothers fans, he was Brain.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
yeah, he's Kiff on Futurama.
Yep.
Uh,
That's right.
I mean, anytime they need someone to do an impression of, I always forget his name, the old horror writer, like anytime you think of a horror voice, this is the guy that comes up. Um, it'll come to me. I'm sorry. He does this impression all the time. Maurice LaMarche is asked to do like three voices, and this is one of them. But rounding out the cast, we've got Roland, who's voiced by Alfonso Ribeiro, friggin' Carlton
Carlton
from
Mhm.
himself. Mm-hmm.
from Fresh Prince. We've got Reno Romano, who voices Eduardo. So he was, for folks that may not know him by name, he did several voices for Resident Evil 4 and in an animated version of the Batman, not to be confused with the most recent The Batman that we've seen. So outside of that, Joe, you actually mentioned Eye to Eye, which I thought was pretty funny.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The name of a song from the Goofy movie that Jason Marston, who voices
Mm-hmm.
Garrett, happened to be in. He was Max, Goofy's son in that movie. He'd also lend his voice to Peter Pan and The Lion King too. So we've got a
Yeah.
pretty solid foundation of voice acting talent that comprises this cast. So when you look back at it, I've always been impressed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because I can't imagine how much it would cost to get them together now to try to get the same cast together.
I mean, I don't know if you could afford Carlton at this point. Getting Alfonso Ribeiro to do a cartoon? Get out of here.
Yeah,
Did Frank Welker return for Slimer?
he did not.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So that's an important detail that I'm happy you bring up. Who wants to take a guess at who might have voiced the role of Slimer?
It's gonna be wrong, but I'm gonna say Peter Cullen because if we lost Megatron, maybe we gained Optimus Prime. But I know that's not the case.
Unfortunately, no. Zach, who do you have a guess for?
Oh God, I have no idea who it would be. I it sounded close enough to Frank Welker, but also wasn't. If that makes any sense, I don't
Yeah,
know. Billy Zane, maybe.
you got 50% of the answer.
Oh,
Oh, not. Oh, wait, no, not Billy. Billy West. Billy West. That's who I'm. Fry. That's the
Yep, you
brain.
got it. You
Rolodex.
got it.
Billy Zane did Tybo. Was that it? Yeah. Sure.
well,
Why
he's a
not?
cool dude. He probably did
Yeah.
Tybo.
Dude,
Maybe.
you dead on. Billy West was the voice of Slimer. So
Okay.
freaking
I
yeah,
love
dude.
Billy West. He does so
Yeah.
much.
Ren and Stimpy,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much damn near everybody on Futurama. Yeah, he's the role of Slimer, which he doesn't get to do a whole lot with, but I think he sells it well. I think he
He
does a good
does.
job.
He does. So now, like with obviously the returning three with Egon, Slimer, and of course Janine. This wasn't
Mm-hmm.
either of the women who voiced Janine from the real Ghostbusters, was it?
No, no, actually
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't. Now this is me trying to remember. Uh, I think she goes by Pat Music, I
Mm-hmm.
believe is her name, but her full name is like Patricia Music.
Okay.
And for those of you that may not be familiar with her, she actually does have a pretty important tie to a specific actress that some of us may know. Do you guys know Mae Whitman by chance?
Do not.
Mm-mm.
Sorry.
Nope.
All right. Well, for those of the Arrested Development fans that are listening in the off or in the audience here, Mae Whitman actually voices, or she plays the role of Anne on Arrested Development. She's also one of the ex girlfriends from uh, Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
Oh
and so
yes.
Oh, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
yeah, there's some connections here. But yeah, Pat Music, she's the one that voices uh, yeah Janine, and yeah, you're right. She didn't have any involvement in the earlier series. No,
No, and
so
hopefully this was just surely a casting thing where they couldn't get someone to come back, and not the we think she should be more motherly, and we're gonna
right.
completely change the character.
Well they changed. If you think back to the real Ghostbusters, back when you guys were talking about when they started incorporating Slimer, they changed a bunch of that and started making it more kid friendly because of Ghostbusters 2.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And Ghostbusters 2 changed a lot also to try and match the cartoon as well. So they kind of mimicked each other.
Mhm.
Um and they hinted I liked how they hinted at Janine and Egon had more than just the kind of casual working together, slight attraction relationship. Like at least in the beginning, it seemed like Janine was going, "Oh, I thought we had a closer relationship than that." And Egon's like, "Oh yeah, you did the bookkeeping."
Yes, that's right.
It's like,
That's correct. She
okay,
also
all
did
right.
our bookkeeping. Yeah.
Mm, that was good.
It
That
was
was
fun,
good.
Mm-hmm.
pretty good humor for a kids show. I totally agree with you though. I mean, um, they definitely ramped up her like horn dogginess for Egon in this series because there's definitely no questions about that. I still get the vibe that if there's a holiday party though, you can expect the two of them to end up together
Oh
by
yeah.
the end of
Oh,
that.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
we have no idea what happened to Lewis Tully, and we're not gonna question what happened to Lewis Tully because he even
that's
shows
right.
up at the end of like RGB too, doesn't he?
He
yeah,
did.
he
I
does.
Mm-hmm.
wasn't watching it at that point, but I know that his character did again to incorporate stuff from the movies to
Mm-hmm.
make it canon. I mean the real Ghostbusters started with as canon and loosely connecting to the movies, but
Mhm.
now maybe you're going to get to this later. Does any other members of the cast show up for like one-off returns here or there throughout
Ah.
season one?
Actually, we're not going to save it for later because there are some folks that I've heard who will actually pick out these episodes specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um, now, at the end of season one, we do end up having a two-part episode called "Back in the Saddle," which does bring back the original cast of the real Ghostbusters.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
but now at the same time, we don't get the original actors for obviously Venkman and Winston.
Yep.
Instead, they're Dave Coulier, and I always forget who voiced Winston after Arsenio Hall.
I do too. I struggle with that because I always think of Arsenio Hall when it comes to animated Winston. It's killing me.
Yeah,
Uh, Buster Jones.
that's right.
There we go.
Okay, Buster Jones. So they do bring back like the most recent people who voiced the original for in the RGB series towards the end of season one.
Yes.
And we will get to the reasons for some of what happens at the end of season one. but yes, they do return, so it's a nice little thing to kind of look for at the end of the first season of Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yes, the first
um
season and
yeah.
sadly just the show.
Yes, the
Yeah.
first and final season. Yeah. Grand opening, grand closing. Yeah, it's a little sad.
Kind of a pop. We
um
could maybe refer to it as a pop-up series. It was never.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
one good ride. That's all they wanted.
yeah, limited edition, right?
OVA. That's what we went
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, as we've talked about, we've got some different interpretations for how this show could have been a thing, right?
with.
And in the beginning of this show, the entire arrangement that we just talked about was entirely completely different. All the characters were. So long before there was ever a Ghostbusters 2016, which Joe and I don't talk about very much to prevent all of that psychiatry that went into forgetting it.
Should have had you guys on Podcasters Assemble for that one. I would have enjoyed you squirming.
It would have just been groaning for however long that entire episode was of that podcast. We've just been groaning the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Gran Torino, Clint Eastwood. We're just going to be the entire
He-
time.
Real quick, just a side note. Everybody who had seen the original Ghostbusters hated that movie. People that had never seen the original Ghostbusters and as we were going through the season didn't like Ghostbusters 1 and 2, loved 2016.
Whoa. All
It
right.
was a weird dynamic, guys. It
Yeah.
was so weird.
That is strange.
That's bizarre. How can you not like the first two movies?
There's a
know-
whole other podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. We won't name those people because we don't want you to go out and
No.
find them and do horrible things to them. But so believe it or not, though, to your point, Zach, this all-female idea of Ghostbusters, it actually existed in the original like ideas for Extreme Ghostbusters. So
Okay.
the creators wanted the original Extreme Ghostbusters to be an all-women cast.
Okay.
It was designed to be that. So oddly enough, there was also going to be a different mentor that was going to lead them too. Now, I know I've given you some of this answer already, but who do you think was going to lead this group originally, if not Egon?
I would guess Ray.
Yeah. I'd go Janine.
Joe is correct.
Oh, I
Oh,
finally got
okay.
one.
Originally, yeah.
She does suit up in the original one, right? She does some busting.
Yeah, yeah. I think
She
there's
does.
I think at least a couple of those because there's the one where she gets the genie, and that's where she is. She's a Ghostbuster for the whole episode. And I feel like doesn't she have to in the Sandman episode too? She's got to suit up in that one.
And not to mention, she also suits up at least 2 or 3 times in Extreme Ghostbusters as well. So that's what they were leaning into, though, is the fact that Janine does have some experience in this. And so instead of Egon being the original like professor that teaches these kids, she was actually going to be like a history professor and then do kind of the same mentoring to make them into Ghostbusters, right? So they changed some of the names initially, right? But one of the things I found really weird about this like first idea, Egon was supposed to be kind of like this like ambassador to the ghost realm. Like he was going to have this like massive beard. The original specs for him is that he had this like massive robe and everything. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of like Tron Legacy, like that. This is the idea they had for him. But yeah, otherwise, like the female male counterparts that they would have had later on still match up here quite a bit. The only difference, though, that we've kind of glossed over up to this point, I'm a little surprised, is that Garrett was initially conceived to be like a thrill seeker, base jumper kind of person. But once they did the gender swap here, that's when he ended up being in a wheelchair. and
Hmm.
having a disability. So, and he's still a thrill seeker. I
He
would
very
still
much is,
imagine.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he is. I mean, his skill is opening doors with his wheelchair. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
I would
I
say
learned learned that in the first episode.
of the Extreme Ghostbusters, I think he is the most extreme, legitimately.
Eh, mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Very true.
you know what? I think you are correct, Joe.
Yeah. Because, I mean, Roland's not extreme. He has actual pajamas that button up and match.
It is so damn true. And that's what I can't quite wrap my head around with this show. Like, Zach, if you kept watching it, you would find out that it felt like they took this show seriously,
Mm-hmm.
uh, from a comedic standpoint, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like there are points in this show, even when I've watched it now as an adult, that I'm actually laughing at this show. And it felt like what the creators of the show did with this was they ramped up everything, whether it was the humor, whether it was the horror from the original, which we will get into that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this show, as Zach had mentioned early on, was originally called Ghostbusters Dark. The tone of it is absolutely infinitely darker
Mm-hmm.
than the RGB show ever was. And I mean, Zach, what kind of vibes were you getting watching this for the first time? Kind of experiencing these early episodes. Like, what vibe were you getting?
90s, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
just right off the bat, you get hit with a rendition of the intro. And while it doesn't speak the same to me and just pull from the nostalgia that I grew up with, I'm just sitting here going, this is 90s rock. All right. I like it. The animation that was included in that opening was much darker. I mean, when you think of the original real Ghostbusters in their opening, they had some creepy looking creatures there. And even what made it into like beyond the pilot had been
Mhm.
scaled back a little bit. Um, this was a lot darker, scarier, I guess, in the terms of kids. Um, and just with the first episode dealing with, all right, we're jumping into opening up a crypt that's going to unleash typhoid Mary in a way upon the city. And now, oh, all these people have what ghost zits, I think is what they
Yeah.
called them.
Yeah.
And everyone's just getting infected, and she needed a willing vessel. I was like, all right, well, this is starting off much darker than the
Mm-hmm.
original
Yeah.
series, but I wasn't turned off by it. Granted, it much older now, but I would be interested to watch more and see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Uh, Pretty much the same. Like, it was something that was honestly pretty refreshing. Where it was like, again, there were a few times where I think we talked about this with David Fielding when, like, I watched Power Rangers growing up as a kid, and it was clearly very much made for children.
Hmm.
There's a backstory, but it's very, very loose. It just has to sound cool, and the kids are in. And then as we got older and like where we are now, Boom Studios comes out and they make this amazing comic book series that really, really dives into like the mythos of the Power Rangers, and they add all these other like compelling storylines to it. And I felt that this did the same thing for real Ghostbusters, where like well, the real Ghostbusters, honestly, again, it was a good cartoon. Like I can go back and watch that now and still fully enjoy at least the first like two, 3 seasons. Um,
Hmm.
but it just adds more onto it. And then on top of that, it almost feels like they didn't just make this for children, they made it for the audience that grew up watching the real Ghostbusters and was older now and could handle maybe a few darker elements to it, darker story tones, creepier
Hmm.
looking monsters, and at the same time still attract new viewers or hopefully attract new viewers. But I feel like if that wasn't the goal, that's kind of what it came off as to me because I stumbled across this. I think accidentally, like you did, Mark, or except I did it. Like I stumbled at that in the morning before going to school,
Hmm.
and it hooked me right away because the first episode I saw was the episode where the Grundle came back.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which is one of the
Yeah.
few like actual like call outs to like the old show, other than of course we talked about the old cast coming back at the end, Egon obviously being there. But by and large, like we don't really see any ghosts from the original series other than the Grundle making it here. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the Grundle episodes were there for that, just be like, oh hey, this is something that like oh the older audience will appreciate and keep them watching.
I think what I appreciated right away was the fact that even though Zach, you mentioned like the intro felt like dripping with 90s, um,
Yep.
I love the guitar riffs.
Hmm.
You know, for the same reason that I love the guitar riffs in the beginning of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme, it just hooked me right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was years later that I discovered that the guy who sings the Extreme Ghostbusters theme is actually Jim Cummings. And for those of you who may not know Jim Cummings by name, this is literally Darkwing Duck, uh,
Yes,
Winnie
that's
the
right.
Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, the Tasmanian Devil. I mean, he's singing this song, and I'm just looking at myself like, this is, I just see Winnie the Pooh in the studio, you know? But he
Mm-hmm.
kills it. He kills it with that theme. Once you know who it is, you're like, wow, like props to you, man.
Yeah,
Like
so do you
this
think
is,
Oh,
while he was
oh
recording
bother.
that, yeah,
yeah,
that's what like he makes a
Who are you
mistake.
gonna
Oh
call?
bother.
yeah. Oh, when you're seeing things running through your head. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking about is this dude just killing it in the studio, you know, wearing the little red shirt and nothing else.
Again,
But
It had to be an
podcasting not
Oscar.
made for pants.
Jim,
Recording music right
Jim,
there too.
Jim. We've told you, pants, please,
yeah,
pants. Jim,
Yeah,
we have an open studio.
yeah.
yeah,
We find it weird to have this conversation with you more than once.
Every time you come in, Jim, please, pants.
like I get your last name is Cummings, but please do not make that literal in the office while you're here.
Of course, I'm
Yeah.
drinking. Thank you, thank you, Mark.
You say this is the first and last time Zach will be on the show because he's choking to death. You can't see it. Well, some of you can. Yeah, well, this is what kind of hooked me on it, okay? Now, in the very beginning intro of this, you see the PKE meter from the RGB show, right? Like it's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing you see in the trailer. So for me, I went, whoa, right away, this is connected. It has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had this is the 90s, right? Like we didn't know anything, you know. We're honestly, I still feel like if like War of the Worlds came on the radio in 97, we'd be heading for the basement and,
Hmm.
you know, loading up
Mm-hmm.
shotgun shells. So for this to come along and go, what is this? It wasn't just rare for this to be connected. It was rare for animation to ever do this because most animation properties never do continuations. They're almost always reboots. And so the fact that we got this in 97 was unique because, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was already on its way to a second reboot, almost a
Mm-hmm.
third, I want to say, at this point in time. Masters of the Universe didn't didn't ever continue the
Oh,
same plot lines.
no, because they did that. What the New Adventures of He-Man?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's
just
completely
and
different stuff.
that didn't work at all.
Yeah,
You talk
but
about the
there,
one that just came out this past year?
No, no, there was a '90s attempt at keeping He-Man relevant called the New
Was
Adventures
there?
of He-Man.
I don't
yeah,
remember that.
He got slightly toned down, like
Hmm.
he wasn't as bustling muscles.
Okay.
And I think he had pants. I think he had pants, unlike Jim.
So unfortunate. I
yeah.
mean, it's okay.
I think he was voiced by Patrick Duffy, and he remarries and he moves into the suburbs. He's got like 8 kids. Totally different show. Yeah,
Step by step? What?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, you know, so this was really interesting and unique for this show because there's a reason for why that connected universe is there, and it's because some of the producers from Real Ghostbusters came over to Extreme.
Hmm.
So we ended up getting Richard Reynes, Jeff Klein, and Dan Aykroyd also help consult to keep this feeling like the vibe of Ghostbusters. And I felt like what this show did was take the creepiness from GB1,
Mm-hmm.
skip over GB2,
Yep.
and just kind of, you know, ramp up this like Hellraiser, you know, slash like, I don't know, it's almost gory in a sense, type of horror that Ghostbusters just didn't quite have the identity for at that point in time. You know, it was a just a completely different feel. So I don't know. That was my take on it early on. And as a kid, I was fighting myself going, oh my God, the Grundle has actually killed a child
Yeah.
from RGB. You know, like Joe mentioned, they did make some callbacks, but some of these ghosts are actually killing people in this show.
Which
That
again
that's a
seems
big
very,
change there.
yeah, it seems very like even like difficult to pull off because I feel like there's so many like laws in place for cartoons or any child programming where like you can't show things being violent to kids.
Which honestly, from
Mhm.
everything I've read and experienced with this show, this was stuff behind the scenes that they had to fight
Mhm.
to keep in. Now, technically, they never show people getting killed by the
No.
ghosts, right? But there is one specific episode that stuck with me, and Zach, I hope you get there one day. It's called The Crawler. It's episode 11, and this is where these guys find like these gems in a museum. They're trying to steal them.
Hmm.
They end up releasing this basically this god of bugs.
Oh,
And Joe, I don't know if you remember this one. Long story short, the bugs get into people.
Ooh.
oh no,
Ooh. Yeah,
oh
this it's not ringing a bell,
no.
but it sounds terrifying.
Oh,
Ugh.
it is rough to watch even now. Like I saw this. I actually went back to this one specifically because I remember I was like, this episode's really fucked up, and I got to see it again. I got to remember if it was just as messed up now as it was then. And yeah, like these are the things they were throwing at kids. Like the censors were only worried about like Eduardo and Kylie maybe having a relationship,
Yep, no
and
nudity. Strictly no nudity with those two.
no, no. They're very, very tastefully done. Like they'd pan to the candle, and then the candle wick would blow out. We don't. We're not getting X-rated
Mhm.
here. But
No.
episodes like The Crawler, though, definitely painted this identity that really no other show had at this point in time. I mean, yeah, South Park had some screwed up things. We're not counting that. That
Mhm.
wasn't
Hmm.
that wasn't targeted for kids to watch.
No, that,
You
yeah,
No.
know,
that also aired at prime time. Like that was
You know,
clearly meant for an older audience.
kids were watching, just
Hmm.
trying to get around their parents to watch it.
Yes,
yes, which I did successfully, by the way.
Yeah,
as
good
did
for you.
I.
Well done.
Yeah, yeah. So it just had this totally different feel, and it'll always stick with me that whoever had a hand in this, the horror elements of this show was a strength, and it wasn't just something that was used as a sight gag. It wasn't even shock value, really. Like
Mm-mm.
it was part of the plot, and it legitimately scared me, like as a kid. I mean, how many other shows have you guys seen, if you can remember, animation where someone has a larval bug inside of them hatch? I can't remember any others that did that.
Nope,
No,
don't like that.
no. That pretty much just happened in Alien.
Mm.
Like that's it. That's the only thing I
Yeah,
remember, and that did not get a cartoon.
yeah, oh yeah.
No, but they did have a whole toy line,
That's true, and I had
which I
lots of
had a
that toy
lot of
line.
those. They had that whole Dark Horse comic series, I
Mm-hmm.
That's
think.
true. That's true. I
Hmm.
remember reading those. Yeah,
Yep.
that was so weird too, because I remember my parents did everything they could to keep Alien away from me. And here I was playing with the toys where, you can literally blow somebody's chest open and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is fine.
This is
You
great.
know,
Well,
just don't.
now that I'm thinking about it, like I don't remember the years, but Aliens, Dark Horse, geared at kids. I mean, that was certainly a thing that was being done back in the day. I mean, we had a Beetlejuice cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's
The
true.
movie wasn't necessarily geared for kids. We had a RoboCop cartoon. That
Hmm.
movie is not geared for kids.
No.
Mm-mm.
Terminator 2, play action figures. You had all these movies that were geared towards adults, rated R and 18 plus, and you had cartoons or toys for the kids to capitalize on it. So for a cartoon like this to kind of skate and skirt around like right there on that line, oh, we're here, we're getting by. It's kid content, but oh, there's adult themes. We saw that, but definitely not with Ghostbusters.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, yeah. I remember in the real Ghostbusters series, we did have some of these plot lines that obviously were childish and whatever. Let's reverse the polarity and that'll solve everything.
Yeah. Yep.
But there were some episodes where they were fairly heartfelt, especially with regards to like Peter, where Peter shows that yeah,
Hmm.
this lady reminds me of of a woman I used to know, and I want to help her, kind of thing. And so you actually get these gut
Mm-hmm.
checks occasionally.
Yeah, and like when the episode where Peter's dad comes on,
Yeah, yeah, it's Con
that's
Man Dad.
huge. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Some
and
some of
yeah,
my favorite episodes were Peter episodes when I
yeah,
think about it. And each of them, much like with what you're talking about with Extreme, RGB had uh, episodes that were centered around the characters themselves. Like you're saying with reoccurring ghosts. With Egon being the leader of the team, I'm surprised that the boogeyman did not make an appearance because of
yeah.
his connection to
Mm-hmm.
Egon as a child, and he came up a couple times
He
in
did.
RGB. So I'm surprised
Mm-hmm.
that that wasn't a fun little Easter egg
Mm-hmm.
that they tied in there.
Which were two of my favorite, like my two favorite episodes of RGB were the Boogeyman episodes,
Hmm.
and the second one, like even like as a kid, like one thing that always got me because they're like, oh well, the proton packs and the trap won't work on him because he's not a ghost, so we'll make a special proton wand that will turn him into a ghost so he can trap him. And
Mm.
they're just like, so it's a gun? It's just you're just gonna shoot him, right?
Let's
Just
turn him into a ghost.
yes, we'll
Yeah,
turn him into a ghost. We'll just kill
You,
him.
you do that by bullets, his one weakness.
yes, yes, yeah. If you look at the side of the neutrino wand, it actually says Desert Eagle .50. Yeah, right on the handle. Yeah, but seriously though, like that's why this show felt different, not just from RGB, but also from other shows at the time, was because they did take a chance to not just focus on the horror, but they did come back to the characters and give them some adult oriented development, like character development.
Mm-hmm.
For Kylie, like as you go further through the series, she mentions in the very first episode that her grandmother recently passed away, and that's what kind of gets her into this like spiritual, education and all that.
Hmm.
Well, there's several other episodes throughout the series where she talks to her grandma and so mentally she's going through this like healing process, right? Um, for Eduardo, he ends up going through some character development, talking to his older brother, who's a police officer, and they kind of are at odds. And there's a lot of drama there that I did not actually remember from like being a kid, going back and watching it again. And I'm going, this is heavy shit for kids to watch. And the same thing goes for Roland. Roland has a younger brother that they kind of explain and how he mentors him and all that. But there's also some pretty like serious racism discussions that go on later too, because there are like some racist characters that Roland interacts with.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I almost said hats off to Adelaide and to the producers of this show. Even though they only got one season, they took a lot of chances with it, and it doesn't miss very often.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I mean, Joe, having seen the whole series, I mean, do you agree with that or not?
Yeah, like I'm trying to think. Like, there's always something that's like a weird or a weak episode in every show, where it feels like just because, like again, a lot of times like cartoons, like it was kind of almost standard. Like they got one season, but it was like 50 episodes makes the season, and in that
Hmm.
50 episodes, sometimes there's not always like a driving plot that they are trying to get to at the very end. So they're either episodic, or every once in a while they have to take that episodic approach because not everything can be you know, towards the main story for 50 straight episodes. So they're just weaker things there. And God, looking back at this, like there are episodes that stand out definitely, and then the ones that don't stand out, like to me, like I don't remember like hating it, like oh god, this one's lame. Um, Even things that should be lame. The Leprechaun episode, oh my god, they're going after a Leprechaun. How freaking lame is that? And it's not. It's a good episode.
Yeah, I especially love how they present you some stuff that feels familiar. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
this episode with trolls, and the trolls literally, they multiply by like splitting up, like their
Mm-hmm.
bodies just pull apart,
Oh,
and and
okay.
so it's like equally terrifying, but also kind of
Mm.
cool to watch on screen.
Yeah.
Um, so they do a lot of things. They take, like I said, they took a lot of chances, and I felt the same way. I didn't ever feel like they took a day off
Mm-mm.
with this show, whereas towards the ends of like RGB, even I was like, I can watch like
Yeah.
the first 3 seasons, and then I have to
Mm-hmm.
start deciding how to spend my time.
Yeah. Because even
Yeah.
like great things they do like with each character, looking at even Egon, where you have the episode where like he starts like throwing his back out, and clearly
Yeah.
he's kind of getting he's murtauing. He's a little too old for this,
Yeah, he's getting too old for
and
this shit.
I
Yeah.
think the main villain is a sphinx who's going around doing riddles for everyone.
Yes. Yes.
And you have Egon, who is the one who like inevitably solves the riddle, but in doing so, that scene kind of culminates the episode where Egon finally accepts where he is in his life, and yes, he's older and he probably should not be in the field all the time anymore, but that he still has like he's still incredibly valuable to that team.
Yeah.
So him going into like the Bruce Wayne Batman Beyond sort of style of mentor in the show, like they address it so well to the point where like I feel like if I was an old person watching the show, I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I'm like Egon.
Yeah.
I can't
I'm
do things anymore like that. I really have to shake it like 5 times to get anything to come out now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Egon's probably got prostate issues. They
he
don't talk
probably
about
they
it,
don't,
but
but it's there.
it's
Uh,
implied. It's implied.
how many, and maybe they get into this later. How many years are we past RGB in continuity?
It's actually the same amount of time from 89 to 97. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's actually like the same passage of time.
So this,
So
well, the original series ended in 91, so it's been 6 years
Mm-hmm.
since.
correct.
Okay, so in
Yeah.
6 years, RGB, and the way that they explained that the Ghostbusters went out of business is that, well, they busted all the ghosts and there's nothing left,
Mm-hmm.
and the other Ghostbusters have gone their separate ways, but Egon is still here, just because, just in case. So I mean,
Yeah.
I guess with what they were doing physically, hauling around, you know, nuclear accelerators on their backs, it can be a little daunting.
Hey, you know what? If you've ever worn a turtleneck, it feels like a tiny person slowly choking you. You know,
Yeah, but some people are into that.
I'm not going to kink shame, at all.
Yeah, we don't yuck anyone's yums here.
No, no.
Mm-hmm.
But
No.
I think what the point was at this point in time was that, while busting felt good, they busted too hard, and I don't mean anything sexual by saying that. And
Can you though? Can you bust too hard, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. You're putting holes in things. Yeah, you got to repaint the walls. It's. But I kind of get this vibe from Egon that when I'm in my mid 40s, I think what I would want to do is just settle down and get a ponytail, and and that's what he's doing.
Me too. I'm gonna work on that. It'll be great.
I know this for the folks that are listening who can't see the video. Like I have remains of what was a once glorious civilization on my head here. So I definitely have one of those academia ponytails where it just doesn't belong. But
Mark, if you
either way.
grow one of those, I'm gonna rip it off your damn head.
We're gonna
I'm
we're
not
gonna
letting you
live
do that.
we're gonna live vicariously through Mark. Just him and his lovely. Just look at that. Look at it. It's so poofy on top of Joe's head. Just right up. Great.
I'm gonna be like Bill Murray and Kingpin and have that ridiculous, mane coming off the back. But you know,
God.
unfortunately for Extreme Ghostbusters, despite how good of a show it was, because when people have looked back at this, they went, "I didn't know this was here.
Hmm.
This is actually a pretty solid show." And so there was reasons for why this show only lasted one season. Part of it is because what Joe and I have both mentioned. There was never any consistency to what station you could find it on
Mm-hmm.
or what time of day you could watch
Yeah.
it. It was on like an ABC Family at one point in time. It was on UPN for those of you that remember UPN.
What is the BKN? Bobot Entertainment.
Bobot Entertainment was also one of the stations that you could see it on, and Bobot was basically let's just call it the way that it got to syndication.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
like Bobot helped it get to syndication, and so it just became this impossible show to ever watch. And at this point in time, I was my family was in the military, so when we were in California, I watched it on UPN. Then when we moved to Idaho a couple of years later, I didn't even know what station to even find it on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
What
yeah,
ends up on Fox Kids eventually, doesn't it?
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like
Well,
that's where
ABC
I saw it.
Family,
Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
Fox Kids, yeah, yep, exactly. So Bobot helps distribute it later, but doesn't mean you're ever going to find it.
No.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's what the problem was. Like it was a good show, but just like Dread, the ratings were too low.
Poor marketing approach. People don't know it's out there if you don't tell them that it's out there.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there
mean,
wasn't even time for Fox to say it was a twisted new show and fuck it up and run it into the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah, it's true. It's very true. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, you got to remember this too. This was an era when Extreme was put on everything,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
everything.
Yeah, you got Extreme Sporks. You
Extreme
got
Sports.
shoelaces.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Which you needed because if you had LA gear without extreme shoelaces, what the fuck was on your feet?
Ooh, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your starter jacket,
Uh,
Which
flapping in the wind.
always, for some reason, a Charlotte Hornets starter jacket. No one in the '90s liked the Charlotte Hornets except for people in South Carolina, but we all had one. We don't know why.
I
It's
mean,
true.
they had a badass mascot. I mean,
They
look at that
did.
Hornet, stinger out, dribbling the ball. Oh, I wouldn't fuck with him.
I
I was
mean,
gonna say,
if you'd put him on your truck mud flaps instead of Yosemite Sam, I may actually back off.
No, I mean, that San Jose Sharks. I mean, that thing was biting a hockey
Yeah.
stick in half. Holy crap! Oh man.
I just realized like we were so behind the eight ball on the Charlotte Hornet. We could have said dicks out long before Harambe. You know, but here we are.
Stingers out, yeah.
Yeah, stickers out.
Uh,
Well, all right. So we've obviously alluded to this quite a few times, but I
Mhm.
wanted to get everyone's opinion on this before we sign off for the evening. And this is really the legacy of this show. Now, Zach, you haven't watched the whole thing,
no,
but based off of what you've seen, what do you think the legacy of this show is so far?
the legacy of the show.
Hmm.
I think the legacy of this show, um, in its essence, it actually exists now. It exists in two forms beyond this. A very rough, not quite version existed when the game came out, the Ghostbusters game in the two
Yeah.
thousands, where
Mhm.
you played the rookie and you were being trained by the OGs,
Hmm.
and you go through all of this. Like the synopsis is similar of you're being trained and you're being brought up. Granted, all four of them are there, but it kind of took this idea. A better version of this is Afterlife,
Hmm.
which this again was Aykroyd's original vision that he wanted to do, without going down the whole reason of why it didn't happen. Afterlife, in my opinion, and being a fan of the original two movies, I think did a good job and was a good nostalgia bomb for me while telling a good story. Now, for someone jumping into it, I'm sure they hated it because whatever reason, but I think they took the idea of finding new up and coming kids, putting them in a predicament that they didn't necessarily plan on being in,
Hmm.
and having them bust some ghosts. I think this idea lives within Afterlife because this wasn't 100% Aykroyd's plan, and Afterlife also wasn't 100% Aykroyd's plan and Ramos's plan to a point. Um, I think that's where it is, and I think people will, if they know about it, they'll go check it out just because I want to go check it out. But that's where I think it currently is, legacy wise.
Cool.
Yeah.
Joe, what about your thoughts?
I don't know. Like I guess I'm much more pessimistic with this in that it's hard for me to say the show has a legacy because again, it was just fumbled so poorly with getting the show out there where more people could see it to actually give it more of a chance. Because on top of one, not even marketing and finding a place to watch this thing, they aired the episodes out of order.
Oh yeah.
You like
Jeez.
the Back in the Saddle 2 part was supposed to be the last part of the season, that the last two episodes of the season, and then we get Witchy Woman after that, and
And
suddenly
Sphinx.
and Sphinx, and
Yeah.
you've got like Eduardo and Kylie make some very large character development back in the saddle that is now completely absent. And you're like, what the hell
Yeah.
just happened? Like, was this the way it was supposed to happen? And with that, where it feels like this the thing was one and done. I mean, to me, like I have problems now starting something I know that is going to be done very quickly. Like I was without cable for quite a while, so I didn't watch any of Krypton when it was brand new, despite hearing that it was actually a really good show, and it only got one season.
Hmm.
So now that it's there, I'm like, and I see it, and I can watch it. You can stream it readily now, and I won't start it because I think it only gets one season. Like, why am I going to put time and energy into a show that I know is going to be done so quickly? And if you're someone who, again, isn't a big Ghostbusters fan, and maybe not even a huge animation fan on top of that, and you hear like us saying that, hey, this is actually something that's really good, it feels like the ride's going to be over too quick because you are going to invest time into it. You end up, I mean, I think anyone who watches this as an adult likely is going to really like this cartoon, and then it's just going to be done really, really fast, almost too fast. So I feel like if it has any legacy, it's just a wasted potential, and it sucks. Which it just sucks to be there because it is a great show, and I would recommend anyone like to watch it. But this is also me being a hypocrite because if I was told to watch it, it's really great and it has one season. I might not find time because there are other things I want to watch right now.
I will agree with you on some aspects of that. What I'll disagree with is that we still got 40 episodes of this show.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what I think the legacy of this show is that it's a very rare thing, as we mentioned before. It's a continuation of a series that came out, in animation several years before it,
Mm-hmm.
when other studios weren't really doing this thing yet, right?
Yeah.
It's not a continuation of the movies. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
people to be confused on that. It's a continuation of real Ghostbusters. And so if you were a fan of that and you wanted to see that story continue,
Mm-hmm.
you did get a show that stayed in that universe and paid homage to it. It didn't try to use too much from that series. There's like maybe about a half dozen references. And otherwise, it's a well-made show.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about stories or themes or anything like that. Just technically, it is a well-made, well-produced animation, which is very rare in this realm of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
There's some crazy bright colors, there's some CGI that's mixed in with it. So I would say for a show like this, I think it stands up really well. I think it's for people who discover it later, you're not going to be hit over the head with a 90s mallet too much. Like it, yeah, there's some 90isms in there, but for the most part, it still stands up pretty well. Like you're not getting taken out of the immersion like when you listen to real Ghostbusters and you hear the original produced 80s music they used for it,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, oh, really? Did I wear cutoffs and hot pink shirts? I did.
Yep.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen here. The music is well made. The music sets the tone really well. So for me, I think if you're a Ghostbusters fan and you want to take the time, if you've read the comics, which Kylie appears in, by the way, um, this is a good time capsule for the real Ghostbusters continuity. And I enjoyed it. I mean, there's almost 14 hours to watch. So 14 hours to me, I think is a good amount of time to spend with something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess the kicker for me is that like I brought up Krypton, is that it clearly there's more story to tell because if you take it from the standpoint of obviously where they leave it with Witchy Woman and the Sphinx, there's more story. Like that clearly
Yes.
means like more things can happen. It's there's nothing conclusive there. Or nothing concludes there. And even if like okay, so we aired them in the right order and we end with Back in the Saddle, well there's still more story to tell. We haven't stopped all the ghosts. Um, the gang is now getting along well, and it seems like we can function even better after this episode. But it leaves either way. If you watch it in the order it was aired or the order it was intended to be aired in, it just leaves you wanting more, and you're not going to get it because there is no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I
which
get
yeah.
I
Yeah, I
get
get it.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I kind of view this as if I go back and I watch it, I'm gonna just watch it to enjoy it. And it's gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
fun other look, other within the universe, not technically within the universe. However, the canon now aligns. It's entertaining and it does have
Mm-hmm.
character development. But I 100% Joe get the frustration of
Yeah.
loving and getting into a show and then it being canceled. And Firefly is one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Also, did episodes all out of order, didn't even all get to air. We got a movie. Thoughts on that? Another podcast, but same thing. you can love it and be frustrated at the same time. So
Yeah.
I'm right between the two of you. I love it, but also I would get to the end and go, "Mm, I want more."
Yeah. I think for me, it's riding that wave of nostalgia done right, which
Mm,
sounds weird because it wasn't really nostalgia quite yet for Ghostbusters. It was still fairly recent enough. Um, but when you watch that Back in the Saddle episode, that two-part episode where the original team comes back, there, I don't know. For me, I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get what they're going through as the
Mhm.
OGs. I get what
mm.
they're going through as the new ones, and how they meet in the middle. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the larger point. Like, if you haven't watched this series and you're a Ghostbusters fan, give it a shot. I mean, it's free. You can watch it on YouTube, I think,
Mhm.
even now. Not a
Yep.
sponsor. So
It
definitely
was
give it a chance.
it
Yeah,
was released on their official channel when they were promoting Afterlife. I don't know if it still is, but it was there for a while.
nice. Yeah, and that's the good news is that you can find it now because
Mhm.
there was a time, believe it or not, where people thought real Ghostbusters was lost to the archives. You couldn't even buy it
Yeah.
anywhere.
Mhm.
And the same thing went for this show. People were like, I didn't even know this was a thing, and now I don't even know where to find it. You know, double screwed here. But yes, that's the point. If you haven't seen it, we'll link it in the show
Yeah.
notes. Definitely give it a shot. And
Mhm.
with that, we want to give Zach the floor for a moment. Joe, Zach, you've survived a digital dissection. You know,
Yes,
we
I've
appreciate you
Survived.
survived
being here.
many, so let's focus on Zach.
Joe survived plenty. So Zach, we're gonna give you the floor. Joe's just gonna sit there and stare at you.
Oh, that's what I
So
like. I like when Joe stares at me. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I love what you guys do. You have a great dynamic. I think the title for your podcast is perfect. I love your little shorts that you've been doing. You've been diving into so much stuff that brings back nostalgia for me. Uh, I love what you guys do. So thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it. Among all of your historic and talented guests, I'm still confused why I'm here, but thank you. This was a lot of fun. Um, if people want to find me, I don't have my own podcast, but I hop from podcast to podcast. The three that I do the most is the Neatcast, kind of a pop culture podcast that was started by Jeremy, Mike, and Mark. Two of them I've known for well over a decade and a half, back from the early days of World of Warcraft. And they
mhm.
started a podcast, as everyone did during the pandemic, because it's cool. So I appear with them a couple times a month. Bobby, Rick, and Griff over at Effin Cultured, another pop culture centered podcast. They do a fun thing where they do an episode called Fermented Fruit. You drink and watch fermented movies.
Ooh.
Ooh,
According to Rotten Tomatoes, if it's rotten or fermented. So that's fun. And the last one is Podcasters Assemble. It's like a I love the 80s, 90s, but all about movie series. And as you can tell by the title, started with the MCU, counting down to Endgame. And they've
nice.
tackled James Bond, Star Wars, Mortal Kombat. We've done Ghostbusters. We just wrapped up Batman. We're going to be doing Jurassic Park. And that's open to all podcasters. So if you
Ooh,
guys happen to
Ooh.
be interested in the Jurassic Park series, you can submit your entries and we put them together in the I love the 80s 90s format, and dissect the movie, if you will, but also go through the plot and just what we love and hate about it. So that's where you can usually find me, if you want to find me. If you don't, well, don't avoid them, because they're still really good people, and they should have the downloads. So please download and share and like, subscribe, smash the bell, punch the clown. What's the
yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah. Tickle the like button.
Tickle the Elmo.
Yeah, massage the subscribe button.
If you can
Yeah,
find it,
Caress the Furby.
yeah,
get
yeah.
get the oh no, burn that.
Well, for a little bit of business at the end, I just want to let everybody know we do thank you for listening to Digital Dissection. As always, we appreciate all the Dissection crew does for us on a week after week basis. Your support goes a long way, and if you happened upon this show by accident, why not drop us a review or a comment? This really does help the show get discovered. We also love hearing from you, so feel free to email us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. We welcome your ideas, and if you just want to yell at us through text, that is fine too. Anything you'd like to discuss. And with that, Zach, if you want to take us out, we're letting our guests do our tagline this year, so feel free to take us on out.
All right. Well, until next time, keep on dissecting.
Man, there's going to be some pregnancies coming out of that
Yeah.
tagline.